Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Talk of the Town podcast. If you have not already, make sure to hit that subscribe button as we're now on the road to 500 subscribers here on the YouTube channel. If you love sports content, sports talk, anything from the NFL to the NBA, it's all right here on the Talk of the Town podcast. And man, did we get some shocking but not so shocking news last night with John Harbaugh getting fired from the Baltimore Ravens. It's one thing we all seen coming. We all kind of had the same opinion that it was time for a reset within the Baltimore Ravens organization. But I will say one thing, and while the fan base was ready to move on from John Harbaugh, and, respectfully so, this year was incredibly disappointing. I started off with them being the favorites to win the Super Bowl in Vegas, and they don't even end up making the playoffs. I mean, I don't really think it gets any more disappointing than that. And just constant blown leads, not even just this season, but it dates back to years and years now under Harbaugh. Lamar kind of came in and saved his ass back in 2018, 2019, his MVP year. He was getting ready to get fired, or actually, I think it was Joe Flacco got hurt. He stepped in, and then they ended up going on like a massive winning streak, and then ended up losing to I think they were still the San Diego Chargers at the time, and Phillip Rivers in the playoffs. But Harbaugh was right on the hot seat. It was looking like it was getting ready to be a full reset in Baltimore with a new quarterback in the first round, Lamar Jackson. And Lamar came in and saved his ass. So it was only a matter of time. I mean, I've been saying this for a while, and it feels weird with him being gone, especially living near the area. Family's full of Ravens fans. Friends are Ravens fans. Of course, I'm not, but it kind of feels like Bill Belichick. Just kind of comparing it to me being a Patriots fan as well. Like, I'm 22 years old. I've only known Bill Belichick being the Patriots head coach my whole life. And with the Ravens, it's kind of the same thing. He was there for 18 years. I mean, he was hired when I was, 4 years old or something like that, 2008. So I was born in 2003, so I was like 4 or 5 years old when he was hired. So definitely just feels weird. I mean, all I know is John Harbaugh coaching the Ravens, but definitely opens up some opportunities for this franchise. It's felt like a long time coming. I've been saying for years now this franchise needed a just kind of a full reset. And I still wonder, what if they did end up firing Harbaugh in 2018, before Lamar came in and saved him there? If they would have ended up, I forget who was necessarily in the head coaching cycle in 2018, but if they ended up snagging, I think Kyle Shanahan was one. He got hired in, was it 17 or 18? I think it was after the Falcons Super Bowl, which was in 16. So it was kind of near there somewhere. But just say they ended up hiring one of the higher ups in terms of the head coaching cycle back then. Would it all be different? I don't know. I'm not going to do necessarily any hypotheticals on that, but it's something to think about. I thought about that for a while. But the Baltimore Ravens job has now become the most sought-after head coaching job, not only in the NFL by a mile, but really in sports. Most jobs that open up are the Raiders, which is open, the Jets, which could be open. I don't know if they're going to fire Aaron Glenn. It's not really looking like it right now. The Titans, the Giants, organizations that have just been bad for so long. And now whoever steps into this organization, you're stepping into a multiple-time MVP who is now looking like he's going to be finally healthy heading into this season. He was banged up this year, but I think regardless, even at the beginning, I was saying with the Ravens, even when they were healthy, this team just looked outmatched. They really just looked outcoached, and it started with the first game of the season against the Buffalo Bills, where the Bills had that fourth quarter comeback, and I was like, it's kind of looking like one of those seasons again. And no one was really talking about whether or not John Harbaugh gets fired, but one of my early predictions on the year was if this season ends up going really bad for the Ravens, and when I meant really bad, I was saying one and done in the wild card round, they get bounced out in the divisional after being the number one seed, even the AFC Championship, things are going to get really weird within the Ravens organization. I would have never thought in a million years they wouldn't have made the playoffs. So that to me was he is 100% getting fired. I know some people, what was it, on Monday, when some of the head coaches were getting fired, like Pete Carroll and some of those guys, they were they were like, "Well, where's John Harbaugh?" I'm sorry, he hasn't gotten fired yet. I was telling some of my friends, it's going to be like a mutually parted ways kind of thing. He's not going to immediately get fired, but he'll be fired within the next couple of days. And he ended up getting fired, a day after, a day after Monday, when usually the really bad head coaches just kind of get the boot right away. I mean, hell, look at Raheem Morris. He got it. I think he got it on Sunday after their game. So that tells you really all you need to know, and especially after he won. So Harbaugh is incredibly respected within the organization, and we all know that. And meanwhile, the last couple of years haven't been the greatest. I know they made the AFC Championship a few years ago. They made the playoffs last year and ended up getting to the divisional round. It still just feels like an incredibly disappointing kind of tenure there. He's had a lot of success, and guys like Mark Davis with the Raiders, who, Harbaugh, that's an option for him, which I'll get into here in a minute. A lot of people are like, there's no way John Harbaugh goes to the Raiders, but I think there's a kind of a slight possibility. I don't necessarily think that's his first option, and I think other options are going to open up, which is where I think he'll be looking at. But guys like the Raiders, Mark Davis and those guys over there now with Tom Brady within the ownership group and stuff like that. The Giants, who haven't been good since Eli Manning, and even the last few years of Eli Manning were terrible. I mean, it's really been since they won the Super Bowl in 2011. They just haven't done anything. The Jets, which that job isn't necessarily open, but the Cardinals are terrible. The Titans, teams like that could only hope to be able to be like, hey, you know what? We keep getting bounced out in the AFC divisional, the AFC championship, the wild card round. Like, we just keep getting bounced out. They can only hope to keep having, 9-win seasons, 10-win, 11-win seasons, all kind of back-to-back consecutively. Like these teams you always look up in the draft order, they're drafting top 5. Who do you always see in the first 6 picks of the draft? The Browns, the Raiders, the Jets, the Titans, the Cardinals. It's all the same teams. The Giants over the last 10, 15 years or so are just always drafting within the top 5, 6, 7, something like that. And those teams are going to be all over John Harbaugh. And I know supposedly there's a report going out that the Buccaneers and the Dolphins are supposedly going to be looking at lining him up for an interview. They haven't fired Todd Bowles or Mike McDaniel yet. Harbaugh doesn't quite seem like the guy to just go behind the coach's back and go in for an interview. Again, if he wanted to be there, I think those teams would hire Harbaugh over Bowles and McDaniels in a heartbeat. They just ship him out the building. I've been saying first of all, I thought McDaniels would be toast by week 9 of this season. I mean, they were off to one of the worst starts I've seen for the Dolphins in a while, and they've been pretty shit for a long time. They had a couple of good years with Tua over the last 3-4 years or so, but it was looking like it was headed back to the mid 2010s and so on for the Dolphins. But those guys would hire him in a heartbeat, and I think the Buccaneers job is a job he's going to be eyeing. Again, he's not going to be hired tomorrow. He's not going to be hired next week. It's going to be a while. If he does decide to take a head coaching job, I mean, he's in his early to mid 60s now. And the thing is with a lot of these older head coaches, and I think one thing that really helps John Harbaugh is this isn't necessarily the head coaching cycle from last year when it was Vrabel and Ben Johnson. And I know Aaron Glenn's kind of sucked, but he was seen as one of the top head coaches in the cycle last year. I mean, it was an elite head coaching cycle last year. Liam Cohen, you had a lot of really good guys getting hired who were, highly seen as some of the best coaches, and best coaching hires in a long time, even though Liam Cohen was kind of dog, but, clearly he's turned out to kind of defeat the critics on that one. But, I have a hard time seeing him not coaching. One person he has reminded me of, and I know he's seen to a lot, I guess necessarily like a higher level than this guy. He reminds me a lot of Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy won the one Super Bowl, never really ended up getting back to one, made a couple of NFC championships with Aaron Rodgers, and he's when we went to Dallas, had some regular season success. He reminds me a lot of Mike McCarthy. He's an incredibly successful regular season coach. there is no doubt about it. And I throw his name in there because Mike McCarthy is one of the guys who are potentially lined up to be the Ravens head coach. I don't think he will. Again, an organization like the Ravens, to where they've had 3 head coaches since 1996, since they were founded in 96. They've only had 3 head coaches. That's pretty incredible. I mean, guys, Jesus, look at the Jets, the Raiders, and the teams I mentioned that are the bottom of the barrel. Even the Patriots the last couple of years, as good as they've just been cycling through head coaches like crazy. Now, it finally seems like they found the long-term solution since Belichick and Vrabel, but, you went through the last couple of years of Belichick. You had the one weird year with Gerard Mayo, and Vrabel kind of seems like he's found himself. So, going through 3 head coaches in 30 years is a pretty incredible feat. And they're going to look to be hiring a young coach. And one of the things, or some of the coaches I'd be looking at really hiring if I were the Ravens, my number one is Robert Saleh. And seeing what he's done with the San Francisco 49ers, who are playing this week and in the wild card round against the Eagles. And mind you, I mean, they were 60 minutes away from potentially being the number 1 seed, but the Seahawks ended up snagging it over them on Saturday, of course. How they're even in that position to where you're 60 minutes away from getting the number 1 seed potentially, with all just the masses of injuries they've had still on their defensive line. They're running guys like Cleveland Farrell. I mean, Keon White. They have guys that are barely NFL players. So some of them playing in like the UFL or whatever it was last year. Like, you're just like, how the hell are these guys, the XFL, like, how the hell are these guys starting defensive linemen for a playoff team right now? And it's like the whole defensive line it's nuts what he's done there. And you even look at the Jets, like, yeah, he didn't necessarily have the most successful tenure on the Jets, but who the hell does? I think the last one to do so was, well, who was it? Rex Ryan? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Rex Ryan. He was the last one to have a successful tenure with New York. And that was almost 20 years ago. And as crazy as it is, 2009, 2010, 2011 was almost 20 years ago. It's been a really long time since the New York Jets have had a successful head coach. They go through them like it's just, I don't know. There's nothing to compare it to be honest with you. It's just insane. And I'd say Robert Saleh, working with Zach Wilson, seeing what he did with that defense. They hired Aaron Glenn this year, who is a defensive-minded head coach from the Lions. And they had 0 interceptions this season. They didn't have a single interception this season, and their defense was awful. And the last 4 to 5 weeks of the season, they didn't even look like they didn't even resemble an NFL team at all. I mean, honestly, they really kind of looked like if an XFL team went in and just played whoever it was, whether it was the Saints, the Patriots, the Bills last week, like, it was really embarrassing. I mean, the Bills rolled out Mitch Trubisky last week and the backups, and they just curb stomped the Jets. They're not even like, they don't even look like an NFL team at all. And that's what I'm saying is, like, look at where the organization has went from Saleh to Aaron Glenn in the matter of like a year and a half. It's just insane. And that's where I think you have a young guy like Saleh, who I think you can legitimately build a culture around. And you see what he's doing in San Francisco. He has head coaching experience. I get it. Wasn't necessarily the most winning culture within the New York Jets organization. But you know what they had, which I think speaks for a lot? Hope. Like, not even just between the Aaron Rodgers thing, but even when they had Zach Wilson, that team was like, okay, wait, the Jets actually could be good this year. They were like the fourth highest odds last year to win the Super Bowl. And I know they ended up finishing like 5-12. They fired Saleh after like a 2-3 start. They only ended up winning like 2 or 3 more games all year after that. But I just think you look at it, I think he has extreme potential to be an incredibly long-term, a successful head coach for that organization, which is what they're looking for. They're not necessarily looking for a Mike McCarthy, an older head coach. You can plug in there and you know he's going to be successful, but you kind of feel like you're hiring John Harbaugh again, to be honest with you. That's kind of what the Mike McCarthy signing would feel like, is like, oh, we just hired another John Harbaugh. Well, he won a Super Bowl with 1 year with Aaron Rodgers, but he had all those years of Aaron Rodgers and didn't really do anything at all. Like, he got to one Super Bowl with him, and Aaron Rodgers still has one ring, and he's a top 5 quarterback of all time. And he had some really amazing teams there. He's went to multiple NFC championships, went to the playoffs all the time, had incredible regular season success, but they got nothing to show for it besides one Super Bowl. It feels the exact same as the Ravens. So they're not, I don't think they're really looking for a guy like that. Bill Belichick, too. Of course, he's going to be throwing in rumors of a team that's ready to win now. They're not looking at Bill Belichick and his 25-year-old girlfriend drama and, his GMing issues. He's going to want to step in and be the GM. And an organization like the Ravens isn't going to go for that. You're not stepping into the Titans where you can kind of bully them around and, do whatever you want. Like, he knows that. And if you could maybe just get Bill Belichick the coach without all the, I forget his girlfriend's name, but without all the 25-year-old girlfriend drama, the GMing issues, the stubbornness, just all the drama he's having as like a damn near 80-year-old man is just, no, that's not worth the hire. And unfortunately, it's not going to happen for Bill Belichick. He's said he's wanted to stay at University of North Carolina, but first of all, I'll say this. I think if the Ravens offered him a job, he would be on that like flies on shit. He would be on that. He'd be on the first plane out, or he'd be on the first second is the guy on his private jet or whatever the hell he has. He'd be out of there in 2 seconds and not look back. So I'd like to see him if they Ravens on the 0.9% chance they did offer him a job. Belichick would take that shit in a second, but yeah, they're easily the most sought after job in sports right now. And I think whoever steps into it, Jesse Minter is apparently one of their biggest options there. They've been looking at him. And I think Jesse Minter is eventually going to be their hire. Again, I always say where there's smoke, there's fire, and he's just the biggest name that's just getting thrown around the organization. Again, one of John Harbaugh or Jim Harbaugh's guys, John Harbaugh's brother, of course. It kind of feels like that's coming now. Of course, it's not going to happen within the next couple of days, or I even think within the next month or something like that, because he's still coaching the Chargers. They have a playoff game against the Patriots this Saturday night, or is it no, it's Sunday night. But to me, Robert Saleh is the best one there. I think Jesse Minter's still a little unproven. I think you should just get a guy with a little bit of head coaching experience. Saleh working with nothing, what he's doing with the 49ers defense right now. And even, just seeing that he gave the Jets some sort of hope with Zach Wilson, and Aaron Rodgers goes out and tears his Achilles and his ACL or whatever the hell. And they were still competitive that season. It was crazy. So I'd say get him, coach up that defense, because the one thing with the Ravens this year is like, even though their offense wasn't nearly the juggernaut they've been over the last couple of years, they have been blowing leads like no tomorrow. It's been their defense. They've been up in these games. The Steelers game the other night, a lot of these games for a majority of the year, that their offense hasn't been at full strength. Lamar's been hurt. They haven't been quite as good as they have been over the last couple of years. And they still have leads, but their defense blows it. That's what I'm saying. Go out, get a defensive head coach. I don't know if all the drama and the baggage with Brian Flores is worth it either, to be honest with you. I think I think Brian Flores would be a great head coach. If they were to hire him, I wouldn't hate the hire. But here's one thing. He speaking of Belichick, Brian Flores comes from the Bill Belichick tree of coaches, which are not popular. Josh McDaniels, the Raiders a couple years ago, when he got fired, the players were dead ass ready to quit. They were talking about quitting. Mark Davis had no choice but to get, they had to get him out of there, or else he wasn't going to have a team on the flight to the next game the next week. I mean, it was that bad. And Josh McDaniels just ended up kind of resigning. He said it was the worst experience of his life. They ended up putting Josh McDaniels in like a room, and all the players were getting personal, yelling, screaming. I mean, he said it was demoralizing. It was one of the worst moments of his life. And he'll never be a head coach ever again after that. One, I don't think anyone would ever hire Josh McDaniels, but Brian Flores in Miami, he made Tua Tagovailoa cry. And I don't necessarily think he'd do that to Lamar Jackson, but he is seen as incredibly intense as a head coach. He is about as intense gets as a head coach. Again, he's from that Belichick tree. And honestly, he's quite frankly a bit of an asshole. And I think you do need to have that kind of personality to be a head coach. You need to kind of have that not, I don't want to say stubbornness, but kind of just not let players walk all over you like Mike McDaniel in Miami right now. Players walk all over that guy. They're always constantly and we're not talking 2 minutes late to a meeting, which, again, a lot of these guys, you should be 10, 15, 20 minutes early to meetings to them. But there's been reports of guys showing 45 minutes late to the Miami Dolphins meetings, and some of them not even showing up. And Mike McDaniel doesn't care. All right, he cares, but guys don't take him serious. You kind of look at him and, it just, a lot of the players just say, hey, he's not, you can't take him serious. And, with the weird khaki pants rolled up to his knees and all just a bunch of crazy shit going on with him. A lot of people just kind of laugh. To me, it doesn't matter. I don't really care what people wear or necessarily however they look, but organizations, they don't necessarily want their coaches with their khaki pants rolled up to their knees and, having just strange interviews and stuff like that. So I don't know, but Brian Flores, he coaches a hell of a defense. He's an intense guy. I think he can bring a culture of some sort, but a lot of guys anymore, they kind of like the Ben Johnsons, the Liam Cohens, even Aaron Glenn, they like coaches like that because they're intense, but they're not necessarily overbearing. It's just kind of what life is anymore. They want to be social media kind of celebrity guys. They're out there. They want intense workouts. They are professional athletes, but man, Flores can be a real dick. And that's just been known. And a lot of guys are kind of hesitant to have Brian Flores as their head coach because of that. He has had an open investigation against the league too, or allegation or whatever it is against the league. And, some teams are just kind of hesitant to put him as a head coach because of that. But I still think Robert Saleh is their best bet as a head coach. But it's going to be incredibly sought after. I mean, you're walking into Hall of Famer with Derrick Henry showing no signs of slowing down. Lamar Jackson, a multiple-time MVP. He'll be healthy this year. You have a franchise tackle with Ronnie Stanley. They'll most likely re-sign Linderbaum. I don't see how offensive linemen are so hard to come by. I don't necessarily see how you let that go. They are going to have to draft and spend a little bit of money on some offensive linemen that they do need to do some patchwork there, but they got good players on defense. They're going to let guys like Marlon Humphrey go and stuff like that, I'm sure, but they still have a lot of high caliber talent on that defense. And one thing you look at before I move into the next thing I want to talk about is a lot of these jobs are the Raiders' jobs. And with Mark Davis, and why I say that John Harbaugh could potentially go there, but I feel like if the Buccaneers job, which I think will be the second most sought after job, they have, again, a franchise quarterback, a lot of good talent. They're pretty well run. One thing with the Raiders is Mark Davis is incredibly desperate. We know that. He's been through a lot of head coaches, McDaniels, Antonio Pierce, Pete Carroll now. He says he is sticking by Tom Brady. He needs some sort of direction in the organization. The man is desperate to get some sort of winning culture within that organization and bring something. A lot of coaches don't get paid a lot of money, but Mark Davis will cut him a fat check because, they're going to draft Fernando Mendoza and they will go out there. And meanwhile, Las Vegas is not great. They do attract free agents because of the market. Those players love going to the casino. They like partying after the games. It's a lively partying environment. A lot of young guys my age out there, they love it. They'd rather be in Las Vegas than going and playing in Minnesota where it's freezing cold or Buffalo, even though you're playing with Josh Allen. But, you go to Las Vegas, you party central up there. Just a lively environment. And I think, I'm telling you, Mark Davis, that man is desperate. He will cut him a fat check to be a coach there. And he's convincing. Got Brady there to convince him as well. And again, even though Harbaugh, he's won a Super Bowl, been to multiple playoff trips. You just think, oh, a guy who's in his 60s who wants to go out and, try to win more Super Bowls. Look at Pete Carroll, just go shit the Raiders. Hey, what's he, 80 years old? He just went out there for a year and got fired. He don't care. Why? Mark Davis will cut you a fat paycheck to come and coach there. So that's something to keep an eye out on. I know the Giants' job is incredibly sought after as well. Franchise quarterback, which I think is respectfully so. I think that's one of the best situations you can walk in. Young team. They have another really high draft pick this year. They have a lot of really good talent. Malik Neighbors, Dart, who looked good, a potential franchise quarterback. Scatterbo come back this season. Abdul Carter was kind of heating up towards the end of the season. Burns, their left tackle was an Andrew Thomas. So they got guys. They have dudes down there in New York. So I'd be interesting to see what he ends up doing, whether he even ends up coaching again. But he's the most sought after head coach in a pretty weak head coaching cycle. So I am sure he'll coach. Some team's going to pay him a lot of money to be the coach there for the next 3, 4, 5 years or something like that. So a lot of desperate teams here on the head coaching cycle as well. So one thing I want to talk about before we get out of here is Kliff Kingsbury getting fired. That was another potential head coach the Ravens are looking at, by the way, which they should not go after at all. I think maybe as a offensive coordinator, which is, he got fired from being the Commanders OC this week, but I don't really agree with that, to be honest with you. Them firing Kliff Kingsbury. I don't really know why. I don't know if they just, again, Washington, even though they had their year a couple of years ago, or I guess last year, where they made the NFC Championship against Philadelphia, 60 minutes away from the Super Bowl. You have to remember that organization has been really bad for a long time. And even though they're under a new ownership group, they haven't necessarily made the best coaching decisions in the world. They're not necessarily known for drafting particularly well. I don't really know the thought process behind that, especially with you had Josh Johnson quarterbacking your team over the last 2 to 3 weeks or something like that. You had Marcus Mariota for the majority of the year, which I actually thought the Commanders' offense looked pretty good. You know what's the Commanders' issue? They had one of the worst secondaries in NFL history this year. I mean, their defense was absolutely awful. I mean, Marshawn Lattimore got hurt, and they're old. I mean, Bobby Wagner he doesn't really move. I mean, in coverage, Bobby Wagner is one of, if not the worst linebacker you can possibly have. They got Von Miller, and they have some really old players. I thought it was more of a defensive issue for the Commanders. I mean, when you look at Terry McLaurin's all banged up this year. Debo just looked old, a lot older than we thought. Their offensive line wasn't great. Their running back room, and I think they've got to go out and get another running back in the offseason here. They got some work to do on that team. And I thought with Kliff Kingsbury and a healthy offense for the Commanders, from what we've seen in Jane Daniels' rookie year, he looks incredible. I mean, he was talked about as like a top 5 quarterback as a rookie, up there with Joe Burrow, and he was going to be talked about as a potential MVP candidate this year, and they went out. And they won their first couple of games when their team was healthy. But injuries just massacred that team this year. And I think one thing that we could be potentially looking at in the future for the Commanders is this year, if they go out and they're disappointing again, it kind of felt like a bit of a desperation move from the Commanders firing Kliff Kingsbury. Why? I don't know why. Everyone kind of gave him the injury excuse because it was well warranted. I mean, everyone agreed that team was just torn to hell. I mean, if the Patriots lost Drake May, if the Chargers lost Justin Herbert, we've seen the Ravens without Lamar Jackson. Like, if you lose your franchise quarterback, who's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, makes up for a lot of mistakes, which is what we've seen with the Commanders. They have a lot of mistakes. They have a lot of old players on defense, kind of older players on offense too. They don't necessarily have the greatest roster in the world. He patches a lot of that up. And because that's said for a lot of these top tier quarterbacks, Herbert's making up for a really bad offensive line down there in LA. I just don't necessarily agree. I thought Kingsbury and Jane was kind of like a match made in heaven, to be honest with you. Their offense looked fantastic, and it even looked good at the beginning of this year. But with Dan Quinn in that team now, is like if they go out there and they're disappointing again next year, I bet you Dan Quinn will not be the Commanders' head coach next year. That kind of feels like, hey, we'll fire Kingsbury, but you're next. If we're disappointing, I think we could be midway through the season next year. And if the Commanders are 2-4, 2-5, 3-5, something like that, we'll be looking at kind of like a Raheem Morris and a Falcons situation here. And I think he's 100% had more success than Raheem Morris and the Falcons. But it's interesting. It's definitely something to keep an eye on. And I kind of feel like a bit of a desperation firing there. I don't necessarily agree with it personally. Y'all let me know what you think, especially Commanders fans. I've been seeing some, they don't necessarily agree with the Kliff Kingsbury firing. He's being looked at as a head coaching interview. I don't necessarily think he's a good head coach, but I do think he's a good offensive coordinator. Again, I say a dream scenario for the Ravens, and what I've been saying, and I meant to mention this before, was Robert Saleh as a head coach, which I mentioned, and to hire Kliff Kingsbury as the OC. I think you have an elite group of coaches, like absolutely elite. And I just, I don't know. I don't really know what the Commanders are doing there, but it feels desperate. It doesn't feel like the right move to me personally. And I guess we'll just have to see who they hire here. But Dan Quinn might be next, people. But that's it for today's podcast, y'all. I hope y'all enjoyed it. And per usual, y'all, take it easy. I'll see y'all on the next one.